I find questions help me think as I gather information, process, evaluate, and finally do. Here's one. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? When we consider a couple of things, the things you've always wanted to get back to, other things got in the way, you put them on the back burner, you got busy, but they're still there. Or the new things you might want to try to explore, discover, create, learn, express. So that question, what are you waiting for? This showed up for me in more than one instance, so I knew I needed to listen. I wrote it down where I could see it every day. Then some time passed, and this quote, then the day came when the risk to remain tied in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. That's Anais Nin. Let me say that one more time. Then the day came when the risk to remain tied in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. I got to tell you, that quote and that question, pairing those together, it just really gave me what I needed to go forward, to try this podcast, to do this thing. And it has helped me in other areas too, but I think most recently and most profoundly in doing this third act thing, which is trying podcasting. And it has been a wonderful experience in every way, although obviously sometimes very frustrating because I had no idea how to do any of it. All right, so the time was here to take the risk instead of wondering what would have happened if I had only tried. And it worked. I was convicted to start this podcast, to be excited about my third act, turning 60. Scared but excited. And if you have those things together, kind of excited about the prospect of something and also a little bit scared, that is definitely a green light to proceed versus a very hard no. No, I do not want to jump out of a plane. There is no part of me that wants to do that. So kind of being able to distinguish those two, the green light versus the no. Green light usually is a mixture of things, both exciting and scary. All right, so you might remember last week I proposed that we answer the following. Identify your top 3 core values. And let me tell you, if you Google it, there's some great lists out there. So your top 3 core values, the ones that really rise to the top. The questions, why are you here? What are you doing about it? And fill in the blank, I've always wanted to. These are all around passion and purpose, which is the series that we're tying up with today's episode. You can go back and listen for more inspiration, the preceding episode. So let's go back to that question I posed at the very beginning. What are you waiting for? Now, answer it. Is it fear? Is it timing? Is it resources? Not knowing how? I'll bet there's a way around that or through it. And I think you know it too. When I started this, I'm telling you, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to create a website. I didn't know, I figured you press record somewhere, but I really didn't know how to record an episode. And then once you record it, where do you put it? What do you do with it? How do you edit it? How do you get it to where it needs to go? All of those things. I did not know any of that. And I learned because I wanted to. And I'm telling you that you can too. If you want to start a podcast, do that. Or whatever that thing is that you don't want to regret not trying. Find ways around those roadblocks. I spoke with somebody recently who told me that they'd been thinking about this idea of passion and purpose since I had chatted with them about it, and they weren't sure they had one. That got me to thinking, that's what I want for you also, to think about that. Is there a passion? Can you turn it into a purpose? And remember, it goes beyond your loved ones. It goes beyond those that love you. This is beyond even your career, your job, your work. although it may touch on all those areas, it's something, maybe it's gardening, maybe it's collecting a certain kind of thing that you really enjoy collecting and it brings you joy. Those are the kinds of things that you don't want to get to the very end and wish that, oh my gosh, why didn't I ever do that thing? All right, so here's another question for you. And when I first heard it, it absolutely stopped me in my tracks. Who would you be if you weren't afraid? Who would you be if you weren't afraid? Oh my, that is a great one to work through your fears. You owe it to yourself to figure out who you are to get to that thing that lights you up and brings you joy. The discovery can be fun and it's very freeing. Accepting the whole package of yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, they make you who you are. And then this quote given to me at age 28, when I was going through a pretty bad bout of anxiety, I have never forgotten this quote. To achieve all that is possible, we must attempt the impossible. To be all that we can be, we must dream of being more. And that's by John C. Maxwell. One more time. To achieve all that is impossible, we must attempt the impossible. To be all that we can be, we must dream of being more. Wow. To be you, to get to your last breath and feel you were all you wanted to be, you've got to face those fears, get to the strategies to minimize them, and to maximize your confidence, to find that passion and make it purposeful. And again, we talked about last week, it doesn't have to be some big grand thing. You may not necessarily want to be a country singer that's touring the world or whatever, or, there are so many high, what would you call them? Careers that are high visibility, where we see them, we know them, all of that, but that's not necessary. That's unless that's your dream. But we're talking about, even finding something small that brings you pleasure, maybe something you can share. I have some friends who love baking. This is a passion for them. They love to bake, and then they go share it with somebody. So that can be your passion, your purpose. So I I am just going to suggest that you start collecting questions that you can ask yourself, like, what are you waiting for? Who would you be if you weren't afraid? And then the quotes that inspire you, and put it in notes on your phone, write it down in your journal, or put it on a bulletin board where you can see it, whatever works for you. And I will tell you that this has worked for me, putting it on the bulletin board where I can see it ongoing, returning to it again and again has made the biggest difference. The power of words, I believe in their strength. And now our last question for today, because we've got 3 questions and 3 quotes that go with them. What's the worst thing that could happen? It's the worst thing that can happen. So you've got an idea of a new path, something you want to try, somewhere you might want to head, explore a new thing. You're minimizing your fear. You may find yourself playing the what if game, and this is one of the many fears that there are out there. There are lots, but this is one of them, the what if game. And I have to tell you, I was so very good at this game, especially during those bouts of anxiety that I had. What could happen? But what if this? What if that? So let's do worst case scenario. It's a great strategy. Beth and Randall of the TV show This Is Us played this a few times during the series. You got to YouTube it. It's so good. They go, okay, let's do it. And then they start spitting out the worst thing they could imagine that could possibly happen in this scenario. And there's something about verbalizing it, taking it and putting it out loud, and especially to another person, that it takes some of the wind out of the fear. And I also learned this technique when I was in therapy when I was 21, a different time. I'm feeling really racked with anxiety. My therapist at the time would say, okay, so what's the worst could happen? I say it. He goes, and, well, this and this, and this and this. So, and so he would take me down the path with and so, and so. And I tell you, it's like a balloon. It takes the air out scenario by scenario. It just takes the air, that anxiety air, out of the balloon and just brings it down. I was having terrible panic attacks driving to college. I don't know exactly what was going on in my head. But I really knew what it was happening to me. These were panic attacks. I didn't know it until that time. I had had them at an earlier age, but I didn't know. I didn't tell anybody. It wasn't until I was 21 that I verbalized it and said, Mom, I need help. We found a therapist. And he said, oh, those are panic attacks. And I was having so much trouble just, getting to college, having panic attacks. And he would walk me through this. He'd say, okay, well, what happens if you're driving to school and you get a panic attack? I know, I have a panic attack. And I guess I could just turn around and go home. Yeah, okay, so, oh, oh. You can just turn around and go home. Okay. But what if I'm at class and I have a panic attack? What do I do? Well, what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, I have the panic attack. Well, I guess I could just leave and go home or call somebody on the phone. Okay. And I mean, I can't even, I can see myself in that office going through this. Also, I was so worried about failing a class because I had always been a top-notch student, always done well, and I had astronomy and it was so hard. And I remember saying to him, but what if I fail the class? Okay, you fail the class and, and it just was like, oh, okay, then I failed the class. The world is not going to end. My life is going to continue on. I'll deal with the consequences. Nothing. It's that anticipation for those of us with anxiety. And sometimes people that don't even really have not even experienced anxiety to that degree can relate to that what if scenario. Play worst case, the what if scenario, play worst case scenario to it and see if you can't get some of that air out. You can't prepare for all the variables. You realize if one does happen that you'll deal with it. If I do fail the class, okay, I'll deal with it. I have to take it over. I have to take something else. By the way, I did get a D in that class, the only D I got in college. I'm very proud of that D because I got through. I still got to graduate. Once you dial it down, you realize if nothing else, you will take your newfound knowledge with you and you will pivot. There's nothing wrong with that. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And that's Wayne Gretzky. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That is so powerful. If you don't try, you have no idea how it's going to go. That is another quote that really hit me. One I collected, I kept close by to encourage me, to help me. And there are so many questions you can ask yourself as you find out who you are, as you look for, discover, renew a passion that you have. Quotes that speak to you, that spur you on. These questions can help you. The quotes can inspire you. Pay attention. You'll know the ones that are for you, and watch out. The sky's the limit.